There's a particular kind of heartbreak that comes with unwrapping a bar of chocolate you've loved your entire life and realizing somewhere in the back of your mind that something's wrong. It doesn't taste quite right anymore, the texture's different, but you push that thought away because surely a brand this iconic wouldn't change the very thing that made it beloved in the first place. Except they would, and they did, and they're betting you won't make a fuss about it. British chocolate was once something we could genuinely be proud of. While the Swiss had their precision and the Belgians their artisan traditions, we had something different. We had chocolate that tasted of childhood, of corner shops and birthday parties, of mums saying just one square and Christmas selection boxes that sparked genuine excitement. Our chocolate wasn't trying to be fancy or expensive, it was democratic, accessible and consistently good. But over the past 15 years, something catastrophic has happened to British chocolate. Not gradually, not subtly, but in a series of corporate decisions that feel so cynical and calculated that they've fundamentally changed what it means to open a British chocolate bar. And the worst part? Most people haven't even consciously noticed. They just know, somewhere deep down, that it's not the same anymore. Let's start with the one that matters most. Cadbury. The name that was synonymous with British chocolate for nearly 2 centuries. The purple wrapper that meant everything was going to be all right. A Quaker company built on principles of quality and worker welfare, operating from Bourneville with a genuine sense of social responsibility that shaped an entire community. In January 2010, that ended. Kraft Foods, the American giant known primarily for processed cheese products, launched a hostile takeover bid for Cadbury. The British public watched in horror as an iconic piece of our heritage was carved up and sold off. Politicians made concerned noises. Workers protested. Chocolate lovers genuinely mourned, because everyone knew what was coming. Kraft beat out Hershey's and Ferrero in a bidding war that felt less like a business transaction and more like watching vultures circle a beloved family pet. And we were right to be worried, because what followed was exactly the nightmare scenario everyone had predicted. Kraft, which later became Mondelez International after a corporate restructuring, didn't buy Cadbury to preserve it. They bought it to extract value from it, and they did so with ruthless efficiency. Within months of the takeover, promises were broken. The Somerdale factory in Bristol, which had been making Cadbury chocolate since the 1920s, was closed, despite assurances it wouldn't be. 500 people lost their jobs. Production was moved to Poland, where labor costs were lower and regulations were looser. This was just 2 years after the financial crisis, and workers had every reason to be terrified. Between 2004 and 2008, Kraft had laid off 19,000 people. The company was carrying £22 billion in debt. The writing wasn't just on the wall, it was in massive neon letters visible from space. And still, the takeover went through. But the real crime wasn't just about factories and jobs. It was about what happened to the chocolate itself. If you're over 35, you remember what dairy milk used to taste like. That specific, distinctive creaminess, the way it melted on your tongue with a certain sweetness that wasn't cloying, wasn't artificial, just perfectly balanced. The snap when you broke off a square, the smell when you first opened the wrapper, that was dairy milk, and it was the benchmark against which all other chocolate was measured. That chocolate is gone now. What sits in the purple wrapper today seems to be something different. It's sweeter, greasier, and has a peculiar aftertaste that some people have described quite accurately as slightly sour. Almost like there's a hint of something that shouldn't be there. The texture has changed too. It's somehow both more crumbly and more waxy at the same time, chalky even. The melt isn't right. The snap isn't right. The shine on the chocolate is different. Nothing about it is quite right anymore. Mondelez denies the recipe has changed, but consumer opinion says different. They insist, with the confidence of a corporation that knows most people won't push back, that dairy milk has been made the same way for decades. It's their way of calling us all morons, suggesting our taste buds don't work. But your taste buds aren't lying to you. Something fundamental has shifted in that formula. The theories are numerous and depressingly plausible. Some suggest the cocoa butter content has been reduced, with vegetable fats like palm oil increased to compensate. Back in 2009, Cadbury in New Zealand actually did change the dairy milk recipe to use less cocoa butter and more vegetable fats. Following a fan campaign and public outcry, they reverted back because people definitely noticed the chocolate tasted worse. That tells you everything you need to know about their willingness to tamper with the formula when they think they can get away with it. Others point to changes in the milk supply chain, with different milk from different suppliers creating a different base flavour. There's speculation about the cocoa beans themselves, with cheaper varieties from different regions replacing the traditional blend. The sugar content has almost certainly increased to mask deficiencies elsewhere in the recipe. There is also speculation that Mondelez has introduced butyric acid into the recipe, the same compound that gives Hershey's chocolate its distinctive vomit-like aftertaste, which would explain why dairy milk now has that same suspicious tang. It may be unsubstantiated, but again, our taste buds are doing the judging. Whatever the specific changes, the result is undeniable. Modern dairy milk tastes less like chocolate and more like chocolate-flavored confection. We feel it's been optimized for profit margins rather than flavor, reformulated for consistency rather than quality, and cost-engineered until every penny has been squeezed from the production process. And here's the truly maddening part. They're still charging premium prices for it. You're paying Cadbury prices for what has become, in effect, a mid-tier chocolate product trading entirely on legacy and nostalgia. If there was any doubt about Mondelez's willingness to tamper with beloved products, the cream egg scandal of 2015 put that to rest. Cadbury actually admitted, after being caught, that they changed the chocolate coating on cream eggs from dairy milk to a cheaper standard cocoa mixed chocolate. Their defense was extraordinary. They claimed the cream egg had never been called the Cadbury Dairy Milk Cream Egg, which was technically true but monumentally dishonest given that for decades the packaging had featured the dairy milk branding, and the eggs had tasted like dairy milk because they were coated in dairy milk chocolate. They tried to spin the change as being about improving efficiency rather than reducing costs, as if efficiency and cost cutting weren't exactly the same thing. The BBC brought in award-winning chocolatier Paul A. Young to test the new egg. His verdict was damning. It's sweeter, it doesn't have that characteristic dairy milk taste for me, which I do love. It's nostalgic, it still gives you sweetness, creaminess, milkiness. But because of this change, he didn't need to finish the sentence. Everyone knew what he meant. The public response was immediate and furious. Sales plummeted. Cadbury lost an estimated £6 million on cream eggs that year. For a brief moment, it seemed like consumer power might actually mean something, that corporations couldn't just change beloved products without consequences. But Mondelez didn't revert the recipe. They just waited for the outcry to die down, knowing that eventually people would get tired of being angry about chocolate eggs. And they were right. Within a couple of years, cream egg sales had largely recovered. People went back to buying them because they always had, because Easter felt wrong without them, because change is hard and nostalgia is powerful. The lesson Mondelez learned wasn't don't change the recipe, it was wait out the backlash. While they were busy reformulating chocolate to taste worse, Cadbury was also pioneering another corporate trick that's become standard practice across the industry: shrinkflation. This is when companies reduce product sizes while maintaining or even increasing prices, betting that consumers won't notice or won't care enough to stop buying. Cadbury has been one of the worst offenders. Their multi-pack bars have shrunk so dramatically that they're barely distinguishable from what used to be considered snack-size portions. The standard dairy milk bar has lost weight multiple times over the past decade. Cream egg multi-packs went from 6 eggs to 5, while the price stayed the same or increased. As of this writing, a 4-pack of their tiny snack-size bars costs £1.75, the same price as a 4-pack of Galaxy bars that are gigantic in comparison. It's death by 1,000 cuts. Each individual reduction is small enough to not trigger massive outrage. But step back and look at the cumulative effect over 10 or 15 years, and you realize you're getting significantly less chocolate for significantly more money than you were in 2010. And it's not just Cadbury. This is happening across British chocolate. But Cadbury's fall from grace is the most symbolic because they were once the standard bearer, the brand that set the tone for everyone else. Here's another insult to add to the injury. Mondelez also owns Oreos, and in 2012 they moved Oreo production to the same factory as Cadbury chocolate. Suddenly, there's been an explosion of Cadbury Oreo crossover products. At last count, there are at least 27 different bars with Oreos in them. If you want your already disappointing dairy milk to taste even worse, you can now have it contaminated with Oreos. It's a perfect symbol of what's happened to Cadbury. A distinctly British chocolate brand is now being used as a vehicle to sell American cookies that nobody asked for. The oversaturation is deliberate. Cream eggs, which used to only be available in the run-up to Easter, making them special and anticipated, are now available all year round in multiple formats. There are cream egg chocolate bars, white chocolate versions, ice creams in at least 4 different varieties, trifles, biscuits, muffins, cakes and cupcakes. When everything is special, nothing is special. Cadbury has become a brand that stands for nothing except extracting maximum profit from every possible product configuration. Cadbury isn't the only British chocolate brand to suffer under foreign ownership, though their decline is the most emotionally resonant for most Brits. Rowntree's, the company behind Kit Kat, Aero and Smarties, was bought by Nestle back in 1988 in another hostile takeover that broke British hearts. And while the takeover happened decades earlier, the pattern of decline has been remarkably similar. Kit Kats are thinner than they used to be. Aero bars have more air and less chocolate, which you might think is the point of Aero, except the chocolate itself has changed texture and flavour. Smarties, once made with Rowntree's own chocolate recipe, now taste generic and forgettable. Nestle is a Swiss company, which you'd think would mean chocolate expertise, but they're also a massive conglomerate more interested in market dominance than Kraft. And Britain, with its emotional attachment to chocolate brands and its willingness to keep buying based on nostalgia rather than current quality, has been a perfect market for them to exploit. The same cost-cutting, the same reformulations, the same prioritization of shareholder value over product quality. Different company, same story. What makes the Cadbury decline particularly galling is how they've tried to paper over it with marketing that cynically exploits the very heritage they've destroyed. Since Mondelez took over, Cadbury has had at least 3 rebrandings, each one trying to reconnect with British identity and tradition. The 2020 rebrand was especially transparent in its manipulation. They brought back imagery of the founder, references to the good old days, and started talking about celebrating our national goodness. This from a brand that's now owned by a huge American conglomerate and has moved much of its production overseas. The advertising shows happy families and heartwarming moments, trading on emotions while delivering an inferior product. Remember the iconic Cadbury adverts? The gorilla playing the drums to Phil Collins, the airport trucks drag racing to Queen. Those adverts were creative, memorable, and full of personality. They trusted that the chocolate itself was good enough that they didn't need to explicitly tell you it was good. Now, the advertising is painfully sentimental, trying way too hard to tug at heartstrings with messages about generosity and goodness. There's a reason we still remember the gorilla playing drums 20 years later, and absolutely nobody will remember these generic emotional manipulation adverts in 5 years, let alone 20. In 2009, Cadbury became a fair trade product and was the first major chocolate brand to achieve this certification. It was a genuine point of pride, suggesting that even under corporate ownership, the brand still had some connection to its Quaker roots of ethical business practice. That commitment was dropped in 2016. Now Cadbury has its own in-house sustainability program called Cocoa Life, which sounds great in a press release but allows them to set their own standards and do the absolute bare minimum. They removed the Fair Trade certification, gave themselves their own certification, and continued marketing themselves as ethical and responsible. It's particularly insulting given their new branding is all about celebrating the spirit of generosity. Generous to whom? Certainly not to the cocoa farmers, certainly not to the workers whose factory was closed, certainly not to consumers paying premium prices for reformulated chocolate. It feels like the only generosity on display is the generous profit margins flowing to Mondelez shareholders. Interestingly, one major British chocolate brand has managed to maintain relatively consistent quality despite corporate ownership. Galaxy, owned by Mars. While Galaxy has always been Cadbury's slightly smoother competitor rather than a heritage brand with the same emotional weight, it's worth noting that their chocolate has remained fairly stable. Perhaps it's because Mars, while still a massive corporation, is family-owned rather than publicly traded, which gives them more freedom to prioritize long-term quality over quarterly earnings. Or perhaps Galaxy never had the same reputation for artisan quality that Cadbury did, so there was less to ruin. Either way, the fact that Galaxy has become many people's go-to alternative to dairy milk says everything about how far Cadbury has fallen. Some Cadbury products have fared slightly better than dairy milk. Flake, Twirl and Wispa still taste relatively decent, probably because their unique textures make them harder to reformulate without it being immediately obvious. But even these are shadows of what they once were. But here's where the story gets slightly more hopeful. The corporate ruination of British chocolate has sparked something of a renaissance in small batch Kraft chocolate making. All over Britain, small producers are emerging who actually care about what chocolate tastes like. Companies like Hotel Chocolate, which started as a small operation and has grown while maintaining quality. Montezuma's, creating interesting flavors with genuine craft. Willie's Cacao, Duffy's, Ombar, and dozens of other small makers producing chocolate that would have been considered premium 15 years ago, but now just taste like what chocolate should taste like. These companies use actual cocoa butter, real vanilla, quality ingredients, and traditional methods. They charge more because they cost more to make. A bar of proper Kraft chocolate might be £3 or £4 rather than £1.50 for dairy milk, but you're getting actual chocolate rather than optimized chocolate-flavored product. The cruel irony is that Britain now has better chocolate available than it did in 2010, but you have to actively seek it out and pay more for it. The chocolate that sits at eye level in every corner shop, every supermarket, every petrol station has gotten demonstrably worse while continuing to trade on reputations built decades ago. There's something genuinely sad about watching a cultural touchstone deteriorate in real time. Cadbury wasn't just chocolate, it was part of British identity in a way that's hard to explain to anyone who didn't grow up here. It represented a certain kind of British capitalism, the Quaker tradition of doing well by doing good, of treating workers fairly and customers honestly. The Bourneville factory wasn't just a chocolate factory, it was a model village, an entire community built around the principle that a company should care for its workers. The Cadbury family built houses, schools, parks, and recreational facilities. They pioneered workers' rights and fair treatment long before it was legally required. The chocolate they made was almost secondary to the values the company represented. When Kraft bought Cadbury, they didn't just buy a chocolate recipe, they bought a legacy, a set of values, a piece of British heritage, and they gutted it for parts, keeping the branding while discarding everything that made the brand meaningful. Employees who worked for Cadbury before and after the takeover have spoken about how the company culture was thrown out the window almost immediately. People who had been proud to work for Cadbury suddenly found themselves as just another cog in a massive corporate machine. The sense of purpose, of being part of something meaningful, evaporated overnight. That's what makes this feel like more than just complaining about chocolate. It's about watching rapacious capitalism consume and destroy things that took generations to build, all in pursuit of quarterly earnings reports and shareholder value. Every older person you talk to will tell you the same thing. Chocolate doesn't taste like it used to. And they're not just being nostalgic, they're not just remembering childhood with rose-tinted glasses. They're accurately reporting that something fundamental has changed about British chocolate. We've lost the snap of real chocolate breaking cleanly. We've lost the proper melt, the way it would soften on your tongue, rather than either melting too quickly into grease or sitting there waxy and resistant. We've lost complexity of flavor, that subtle balance between sweet and bitter, creamy and rich. We've lost texture, density, satisfaction. What we've gained is chocolate that's cheaper to produce, more stable on shelves, more consistent from batch to batch, and more profitable for the corporations that make it. We've gained chocolate optimized for everything except taste. So what do we do about this? We can't unsell Cadbury back to British ownership. We can't force Mondelez to revert to the original recipes. We can't legislate quality into corporate chocolate. But we can stop pretending that dairy milk is still what it was. We can stop buying based on nostalgia and start buying based on current quality. We can seek out the small producers who are making real chocolate and support them until they're big enough to challenge the corporate stranglehold on shelf space. We can teach the next generation what proper chocolate tastes like so they don't grow up thinking that waxy, over-sweetened, reformulated dairy milk is the standard. We can tell the story of what was lost so it's not forgotten. And perhaps most importantly, we can remember that some brands are not our friends. They don't care about our memories or our childhoods or our sense of national identity. They care about profit margins and shareholder returns. The moment it becomes advantageous to change everything about a product while keeping the label the same, they'll do it. And they have. British chocolate was once genuinely world-class. It could stand alongside Swiss and Belgian chocolate without apology. We made dairy milk, we made Aero, we made Kit Kat. These weren't just products, they were achievements. And we let them be taken from us, reformulated into mediocrity, and sold back to us at premium prices while we pretended not to notice that everything had changed. The purple wrapper is still there, the Cadbury name is still there, but the chocolate, the real chocolate that made that wrapper and that name mean something, is long gone. And that's worth mourning, even if it's just chocolate. Because it was never just chocolate, it was ours and it was good, and they took it from us anyway.